Yo, I'm Bob. Into Marvel. Happen to be totally blind since birth. Talking about X-Men the Animated Series, Season 2, Episodes 5 and 6. They are Repo Man and Xternally Yours. They're the 18th and 19th episodes of the show overall. Repo Man premiered on November 20th in 1993, and Xternally Yours premiered on December 4th in 1993. Spoilers ahead, watch the episodes if you don't want to get spoiled. That being said, jumping right in, you were warned. Repo Man's a very memorable episode for me. Not being able to read the comics as a kid, of course I was curious about Wolverine's origin story. And I'd seen Intermagneto and Deadly Reunions by this point. I owned them on VHS at the time. And I remember the comments the X-Men made about how wild Wolverine was when he first showed up. And that made me wonder what the heck this guy was up to before he joined the X-Men. And we get that in this episode. Of course, now we've seen that in movies, and I think it might be in a couple of other animated series, albeit briefly. I really like this interpretation of his origin story. And it's a very memorable episode for me because it's the first episode I'd get to watch with my little brother. We got to see each other once every year during the summer, most of the summer. He lived with my stepmom, my dad, and my little sister. So 10:30 Saturday mornings in that house was like comic book day combined with some kind of sports event for my brother and me, I think. And I love this episode. It was a Wolverine Sojourn episode. You know how, kids in Wolverine still are, I would imagine. And I like how it starts out. He's lured to Canada by Heather. He's calling her name as the episode begins. By the way, I would use that bit to prank call my cousin Heather quite a few times. It would really tick her off as a little kid quite a bit. Especially when he just kind of quietly asks, Heather? So I would use that little sound bit to drive Heather a bit nuts. But Heather Hudson lures Wolverine to Canada, and she's part of Department H. I like that we learn a little bit about these guys in the episode. I hope we're not done with Department H. I hope they show up again in X-Men 97. So Department H is a patriotic outlet, according to General Chasen, for Canadians with special abilities. And Wolverine's left them. Now they want him back because they've been trying to replicate the adamantium bonding process, and they've had failure after failure, and they want him back to see if they can get more answers. Unbeknownst to everybody but General Chasen, possibly Vindicator as well, yeah, they're going to remove the skeleton from his body. I feel bad for Alpha Flight because they think that they're getting Wolverine back so he can work with them again. I think they actually missed the grumpy old man with claws. And that fight scene at the beginning of the episode I really like. We get to see all these mutants showcasing their powers. We get to see Puck, Shaman. We get to see North Star. Who else do we got on that team? Aurora, I think. Who else? I don't know, I'm not really sure of all of their names. We don't really get to hear, I don't think, all of their names in the episode. It's a really cool team. Sasquatch, I love that guy. He does manage to best them, and then we get the flashback to the guys from the Weapon X program. We also get to see, I don't know if we get to see him or not, actually. Professor Oyama is actually part of the Weapon X program. I don't know if he's the crazy guy talking about, Logan, can you hear me? Your skeleton is being infused with a rare metal called adamantium. This guy sounds a bit unhinged. I wouldn't want him working on me. I don't know if that's Oyama or not, since some of these memories are false memories anyway that we, learn about in Weapon X lies in videotape later on. Who knows? So I don't know if this guy is someone else or if that's actually Oyama. I would think it's someone else, but who knows? So yeah, getting to see Wolverine, those claws popping out for the first time, him breaking out of his restraints and wreaking havoc on the joint. It was kind of an interesting scene. I kind of wanted to see more of the Weapon X program. We only got to see this plot thread picked up one more time in Weapon X Lies in Videotape. Hopefully they'll be back as well in X-Men 97. So yeah, I love that flashback. And I remember thinking that I was pretty much feasting on this stuff as a kid. It didn't feel like a kid's show, as I've said in other videos. I loved how those claws popped out. And then, of course, we're back in the present, and he does get captured by Department H. And we hear talk of, Wolverine's skeleton actually being removed. Heather didn't know about it. I think Chasen did. Vindicator did. Vindicator seems interesting. I'd like to see more of him. I read at one point that he's kind of like the Canadian version of Captain America. Well, I don't really like him in this episode very much, but I wouldn't mind seeing him again. Got all kinds of weapons that he can use. He mostly relies on his force field in this episode. While all this is going on, we get to see Jean. She's trying to search for Professor Xavier. We get to see a little bit of Charles and Eric in the Savage Land. They get to meet Vertigo. I think Vertigo gets a different voice actress after this first appearance, but I don't really have a preference when it comes to Vertigo's voice. I think I like both. Although if she ever tried to use her powers on me, I would probably throw up all over the place. I mean, my sense of balance, yeah, I wouldn't want that impaired, get nauseous and all that. They do manage to best her. And we get just a brief scene with Charles and Eric there in the Savage Land as they're trying to fight for their lives, flee for their lives. That probing process sounded very painful. Of course, Heather puts a stop to it. She had no idea what they were planning. She didn't really know that Wolverine was going to have to be taken out in order for them to replicate the process. So General Chasen, yeah, I don't like you, buddy. Alpha Flight, though, I think they've been spying on everything, and they break in, and we get that fight scene at the end of the episode. All of the security agents are androids, so the mutants can go nuts. I would imagine the shaman there uses shape-shifting abilities, and some of them probably get mauled. Wolverine almost takes out Vindicator before Heather pleads for his life, and he's like, all right, if you guys come after me again for any reason, though, all bets are off. And yeah, that's how that's how the episode ends. No cliffhanger, so I was happy to, not have to wait around to see what would happen in the next episode. And I liked Repo Man quite a bit. I think I give that 10 out of 10. Externally Yours, I think I give that a 10 as well. This is another episode spotlighting one member of the X-Men. We're delving into Gambit's past here. I didn't know much about Gambit before watching the episode. I hadn't seen the episodes from season 1 where he's not wanting people to look into his head, look into his past. So I hadn't seen Days of Future Past, parts 1 and 2. I hadn't seen Final Decision yet. So yeah, in this episode, he has to go to New Orleans to stop the death of his brother Bobby. And the episode starts with him getting this call, and Cyclops is in the danger room, and training goes haywire. I think Cyclops is having to fight, I don't know who. I think Omega Red, by the sound of the flailing carbonadium coils there. Apocalypse might be there. There's somebody roaring. I don't know if that's Sabretooth or not. Sabretooth doesn't roar like an actual animal. The voice actor does the growl, so I'm not sure who this other thing is. But Cyclops is almost deleted. I don't want to use the K word in case YouTube decides to demonetize this video. So that's a really tense scene there for the beginning of the episode. I'd also see this episode with my brother. So while Gambit is going to New Orleans and you've got Wolverine coming back from Canada, he decides to go with Rogue and Jean. So you've got these three headed to New Orleans to see what Gambit's up to. He just up and leaves. He tells them that he's got to go home because they're going to waste his brother. I like I don't want to call her a villain in this episode. I know she is one in the comics, but she's just kind of wanting her tribute, wanting her tithe in this episode. The External is one menacing character, and from what I've read about this group of mutants, these Externals in the comics, they sound like they would be a lot of fun to include in X-Men 97. She's only one of 9, and I think she represents Guile. So if they do go into this particular part of her backstory later on in the animated series, I would absolutely enjoy that. She's on her own. She's kind of doing her own thing when she takes tithe from the Assassins Guild and the Thieves Guild. Speaking of assassins and thieves, yeah, Gambit having to grow up around feuding folks must not have been a happy childhood at all. No wonder he decided to leave and join the X-Men after a while. You know, his old flame, Belladonna, is wanting to get back with him, but she's not really telling him everything. I think she uses some ring to cause him a lot of pain. I think she actually has powers. The External can bestow powers on whoever she chooses to deliver the tithe. So she's an assassin. Gambit was a thief. They were going to get married. He didn't want to do it, and she's a spurned lover, very upset with Gambit. So yeah, the episode is basically him writhing around in agony, captured by Belladonna. Belladonna is a very very nutty individual. I still like her character and would love to see her show back up in X-Men 97. I don't know if we're going to get that or not, though. I also like that the Externals, that they have ties to Apocalypse in the comics. So if they're going to bring Apocalypse back in 97, I mean, we do know that he managed to return at the end of the animated series before it was taken off the air. That would be kind of cool if this particular External would show up. I think her name might be Kandra or Kandra. I don't want to call her Kandra because that makes me think of the Killer Instinct video game character. Maybe it's Kandra. I think that's who she's supposed to represent. Yeah, she is. She chews scenery when she's on the screen. I like what she can do. And they do manage to solve the problem. Belladonna is exposed for the villain that she is. And Gambit, being Gambit, wants her powers taken, but not her life. So the External does do that for Gambit. And I like how he ends the episode. He tells him, I'm not thief. I'm not an assassin. I'm an X-Man, and I'm never coming back. You know, he's found his family, and he's had to basically reveal a part of his past he'd never wanted to. And I like how they don't judge him for it. Cyclops recovering back at the mansion was actually confused as to why he hadn't revealed it. And Jean had mentioned to him, well, you know, it's hard for us to reveal parts of our past that we'd rather not have our friends know about. And she says it's going to be a bit of a challenge to get Gambit to trust. But since Xavier's gone, I mean, it's up to them now. So we get to see a little bit more of Xavier and Magneto in the Savage Land. They get to meet Barbarous. I think his action figure was called Forearm when I was a kid, so I didn't know who that action figure was. I never picked him up. If I'd known he was one of the Savage Land mutates created by Magneto, I would have picked him up. I would have loved to have seen that flashback, how Magneto made these guys with some kind of machine, kind of like something he used from the first X-Men movie. Oh, man. I would have loved to see some Magneto Savage Land flashbacks, how he came there, how he created mutates like Barbarous and the others. Yeah, they do manage to evade him. I think they sick some bees on him. So he's like, no, bees. Well, he doesn't scream like that. He just says no, and you know, they manage to flee for their lives, and they live to fight another day, I guess. I give Externally Yours a definite 10 out of 10. The External even though she wasn't necessarily a villain, I like how powerful she was. Man, she's got quite an amazing voice actress who does her voice. I really enjoyed her screen time. I'd like to see Belladonna show back up at some point, because I don't think she's done with Gambit, even though she has no powers. I mean, she seems to be a very wily individual, so she very well could show back up at some point in the animated series. I know that she and Gambit have more things to do in the comics, from what I've been able to read online pertaining to her. But yeah, I'd love to see the Xternals show up and get to see their ties to Apocalypse explored in X-Men 97. I hope we're not done with Kandra. She's a very deceptive external when it comes to these mutants. So yeah, I hope we get to see more of a lot of this stuff in the future. That'll do for this video review. 10 out of 10. Next time we're going to be talking about Time Fugitives Parts 1 and 2. So be here for those. Till then, true believers.